just to introduce myself again, hi, I'm Jiajia. I'm currently a senior undergrad at Harvard. I study physics and astrophysics, specifically interested in exoplanets and astrochemistry. And I do research at the Center for Astrophysics. And I'm hoping to start a PhD in astrophysics next year. It's just a little bit about me. And again, yeah, I'm part of a NASA Partner Eclipse Ambassador program. So that's with the Astronomical Society of Pacific. Basically in this program, an amateur astronomer and undergrad student of any major can partner, and then they sort of will do outreach events to underserved communities and just different astronomical communities in their local area and talk about the eclipses. So that's what me and Mario have been doing the past few months. So again, if you're interested, you can still apply to be an ambassador and get partnered up with an undergrad student or an astronomer near you. And then I'll introduce my colleague Kane.
Hey, I'm Kane. I'm a junior at Harvard also. I'm studying astrophysics and physics. I'm the president of STAR, the student astronomers at Harvard Radcliffe, so aptly named. We run the 10-inch, we run the Loomis Michael Observatory, where we have a 10-inch refractor there. And I'm doing instrumentation research right now with the COVAC group on the cosmic microwave background. And I help teach telescope and astrophotography classes to Harvard affiliates and students.
Way to go.
Yeah, Kane's really our astrophotographer. Again, just a quick overview. Again, I'm sure lots of you guys probably saw the annular solar eclipse, either traveled to the path of annularity or again, saw a partial eclipse from places around here. And yeah, this is a nice map from GAAC to show you sort of the general path of annularity and the path of totality for the October eclipse as well as the April eclipse. And just to go over real quick, in case anybody gets new to eclipses here, there's sort of three different types of eclipses. So there's total eclipse, an annular eclipse, or partial eclipse. It depends on what the alignment of the sun, moon, and earth is, and also where you're viewing it from on Earth. So upcoming eclipse in April is going to be a total eclipse, and that's where the moon fully covers up the sun. And again, if you're in that path of totality, a very narrow path of totality, you'll be able to see that really exceptional sight. And then the past October eclipse is the annular eclipse, or ring of fire, as you can see from this picture, where the moon doesn't fully cover up the sun. And then partial eclipse is basically you're viewing that eclipse, either of those eclipses, from anywhere outside of that path of annularity or totality. So that's what we'll be seeing in Boston, both for October and in April. Again, I know we'll have the following presentation with a recap of the annular eclipse, but I wanted to share some pictures again from Dr. Mario Moda that he got in Albuquerque. Again, very lovely photo and nice sort of time lapse of the entire annular eclipse. Again, and I think it's so beautiful because that moon is so perfectly centered on the sun. You can see that beautiful ring of fire around it. Really quite a sight.
Mario probably measured them with a micrometer.
Yeah.
Actually, when we were looking at, we knew it went through Albuquerque, and I was looking for a hotel, and my wife decided to search. She had my map, and she looked online and found a hotel called the San Mateo. It was right on the center line. It was right on the center. Pretty perfect aspect. That's why I got a perfect one.
Amazing. We're very lucky to get these beautiful images from you. Kate and I were actually here or we were at Harvard's campus viewing the partial eclipse. We got to see a little bit of it, maybe 20% eclipse before the clouds rolled in, but we think that's pretty lucky for Boston. All right.
Yeah, there you go.
Could I ask you just,
Yeah.
your goals, would you want to teach at university, you want to do research, just to know a little bit more about it?
Yeah.
You're going to come to that at the end.
I'm talking about it now, that's totally fine. Yeah, I'm hoping to do research in the future, again, maybe go to the professor academia track, but also maybe just a full-time researcher like NASA or something like that.
Yeah.
Big hopes and dreams. Yeah, for the April eclipse, which is coming up in a few months. So here's a nice map again of the whole path of totality. As you can see, it's very exciting. It's coming close to Boston. So we'll just talk a little bit about what we're doing for the eclipse at Harvard, and also again some observing tips and other information for you guys if you want to observe the eclipse. So one thing, again, you guys probably know this already, but 99% is not even close to 100% when it comes to eclipses. When it comes to grades, it's totally fine, but with 99% totality, you kind of get this, again, you get almost full coverage of the sun, but you can still see that sliver of the sun, and because the sun is so bright, it's still, you can't look at it with the naked eye, you still need full like eye protection. But with 100% totality in that path, you can take your eyeglasses off and see like the sun's corona and have all the special parts of like the full experience of the total eclipse. So we're just kind of showing this slide to vouch for, again, if you have the opportunity to travel to the path of totality, definitely recommend it. Even though Kate and I actually have, neither of us have actually seen a total solar eclipse, but we are hoping to see this sort of like once in a lifetime experience. Just to inform you guys, again, if you guys are planning to travel, this is a really nice plot I found that sort of tracks the median cloud fraction, like sort of cloud cover over different parts of the United States with that like path of totality traced across it. So this is data I think is tracing back like from the last 20 years. And as you can see, the sort of more south and like west in the US you go, the like less chance you have for cloud cover. Unfortunately for Boston, again, as you guys probably know, the cloud fraction is likely pretty high in April. So maybe we'll get lucky and we'll get clear skies and you'll be able to see the eclipse. But again, if you really want to see that, be in that path of totality and see the total solar eclipse, definitely recommend traveling down south and getting those plans started early.
A definition of an optimist is an astronomer in the Northeast.
Stay in the area. I suggest that the best of viewing would be just east of Buffalo, just east of Buffalo. That for this area, the Northeast, that would be the best spot. I'm going to Texas, but
Where in Texas are you going?
Kerrville, and we're staying in Bernie. It's spelled Burn, but Texans don't know how to talk. It's pronounced Bernie, and we have 2 buses reserved. We're going to Kerrville.
Hopefully we'll get other very nice pictures from Oregon. All right.
So to present some resources for eclipse planning, eclipsophile.com has fantastic statistics on weather conditions for astronomical events. And then as far as general forecasting, several of you probably already know of this, but as an astrophotographer, I use Clear Dark Sky. It's incredibly useful because it gives you also transparency in seeing predictions depending on what you're trying to observe. And they tend to be pretty accurate overall. So I've included a link here for in the case of like Boston, which is usually cloudy, but it's a fantastic prediction model because it's very easy to read and it gives you a really good sense for not just are there clouds or not, but like, is it a good time to do different types of imaging? Timeanddate.com has a lot of statistics about like the exact timing of the eclipses and like where the sun will be in terms of location wise. So it's super useful if you're planning to do any trips. And lastly, of course, there's always NASA. They have lots of fantastic information on the eclipse.
And there's always the GAAC weather page.
Well, yeah, we'll have to add it to our slides.
And so up in Boston, we'll be getting 93% coverage, which is just really fantastic considering the last one in October was like maybe 20%. So it's not 100, but you know, it's pretty close and it'll still be really interesting to see, very like Lord of the Rings, like Gates of Mordor. So first contact is going to be at 2:15-ish and then maximum coverage will happen at 3:30. And then the eclipse will end again at like 4:40. So actually a pretty decent like kind of slot within which to observe it and also to hope that the clouds move. So we're optimistic. And even though the forecast is cloudy 61% of the time, you know, we'll take it. And so at Harvard, we'll be running a huge public event on the Science Center Plaza. So here we have the Science Center, and just over here, this is actually the Loomis Micro Observatory where we have our refractor. We live up there, STAR. But down in the plaza, we'll be bringing down a lot of different telescopes for white light viewing of the sun. And we'll also hopefully have some hydrogen alpha telescopes set up for observing to get some nice contrast on the sun. And we'll be doing a variety of different like interactives and demos and stuff. And so it's just going to be a large public oriented event open to anyone. It'll be running for like the full duration. We expect to get like several hundreds of people coming by. And rain or shine, we will have live stream projections from somewhere where it's sunny, and we'll have food and drinks. So if any of you happen to be coming down to Boston during that time, please feel free to stop by.
Yeah, so first choice, path of totality, second choice, maybe come join us on campus.
And so the next total eclipse in the continental US will be 2045. That's not to say it's not happening elsewhere in the world. So if you buy an airline ticket, you can definitely go see them. They happen definitely more frequently than like once every 40 years or so, 30 years. And so yeah, if you can go to the path of totality for this eclipse, definitely do it. I'm planning to potentially fly down to Texas also.
I'm hoping NASA will fly me down here. All right. Yeah, we'll go through a little bit of eclipse viewing safety. So again, whenever any part of the sun surface is showing, it's not safe to look with unprotected eyes. So as you can see, if you're in the path of totality, you should keep your eye protection on all the way until the moon fully covers the sun. And then you're allowed to take your glasses off just for the total eclipse. So when that moon's like fully covering the sun and no part of the sun surface is visible. So I think that's just pretty good, like rule of thumb. So if you're outside of the path of totality, you should keep your eye protection on the entire time. Since parts of the sun surface will always be showing during the partial eclipse. And I know that sometimes it's a little hard to find like reputable glasses and filters. Again, Amazon, it can sort of be dicey sometimes, but AAS, so the American Astronomical Society has like compiled a list of reputable vendors and like good places to get solar filters and solar viewers that are up to like this international standard, so you can make sure that your eyes stay safe.
And some of them are available among the pastries.
Of course, we have to have an obligatory slide about unsafe viewing methods. We get a lot of questions all the time from students, again, who are trying to find other ways to.
It's actually quite impressive. I mean, come on, that's a lot of different ways that people come up with.
Yeah. I'm taking this list from one of Mario's presentations. I'm sure he's heard it all. Yeah, sunglasses, multiple sunglasses, nothing, that won't be enough. Again, if you've ever looked through like eclipse safety glasses, like just on a normal, like not at the sun, you can't see anything. You shouldn't be able to see anything except the sun because it's really dark. So yeah, any of those other things are just not they're not safe or like approved to look at eclipses.
Can I interject just one point here? The problem is we all won't stare at the sun because it hurts, right? So you look at the sun, you immediately look away. But when you get to a thin crescent, less than about 5% of a crescent, it's not enough sunlight to cause pain. So you can actually stare at it. But what's happening is that area is still the full intensity of the sun. So for where it's focused on your retina, you will burn the retina in that area, and you'll have what's called a crescent burn. I've actually seen a few of those. So don't stare at the sun when it's a crescent, even if it doesn't hurt.
And evidently someone there managed to stare directly at it, which is impressive.
All right. Oh, and there's something else that I didn't know actually before starting out like the training is that using eclipse glasses, but then viewing through a telescope is also unsafe because telescope will focus the rays of light. So even if you're wearing eclipse glasses, that's only safe if you're like directly viewing, but not if you're viewing through the telescope.
Yeah, so to talk about safe viewing through a telescope, you have a number of options. Principally, you can actually also convert your nighttime telescope into a daytime telescope with just the right filters, which can only be like a few $100s at most. So you have, of course, white light solar filters, which reduce like 99.999% of the actual intensity. You can get those for cheap from a lot of different manufacturers commercially. And this gives you some nice broadband viewing, so you do see things like the sunspots and you see the photosphere with that. If you're wanting for it to go for more detail and contrast, of course, they also make daylight hydrogen alpha telescopes. So like Lunt Solar Systems is a well-known manufacturer of these particular telescopes. They're dedicated systems that are designed to view different layers of the sun and which produce just a really stunning contrast on the sun. Of course, a low-cost method is via pinhole camera. You get immediate focus and a great view. And generally, yeah, don't use unfiltered telescopes. And again, like as you just said, eclipse glasses on a telescope, it's not safe. So. And then as far as solar filters are concerned, you have a number of options. So you do have the white light filters, like I mentioned, and there are two types generally, film and glass, and there's some quality versus cost considerations there. Glass tends to be a bit more expensive, but film can work just as well too. And then as far as narrowband filters are concerned, you have a number of options. So you have hydrogen alpha filters, that's the red in the middle, that's a hydrogen alpha image of the sun. And then on the left, you have a calcium K image. And so they basically provide really fascinating views of different layers of the sun and different sort of forms of activity and different details. I'm really hoping that my star can get a narrowband proper imaging hydrogen alpha telescope or a filter, so we can view it like this, because it really is just stunning. You can start to see like prominences and other types of like detail that you don't normally see in white light. And generally the way that you can actually attach these filters is you can actually take your nighttime telescope, and you can get different things, different accessories. So for example, there's like the Daystar Quark is one model. It's literally like an all-in-one eyepiece, and you put it on the back of your telescope. In particular, a refractor under 100 millimeters size, it can actually be pointed at the sun with the Daystar Quark. If you go over 100 millimeters size for a refractor, you need to get an energy rejection filter, an ERF. This just lowers the overall intensity, because past that, you're starting to really push the optics with just a ton of light. And you can't use reflectors. You can't use reflectors, you have to use refractors for this. So that's one option, to get a Daystar Quark. They're run for about $1,000. They're really fantastic pieces of equipment. And other options, though, you can get dedicated telescopes, like I said, from Lund. They have etalons, which are a special type of solar filter that actually filter out the particular hydrogen alpha wavelength in a nifty way. So there's a variety of options you have. You can see this online also, but look on Lund Solar Systems if you're curious to learn more about this.
Let me interrupt you for just a second, since it's formatted. If we're in town, and I think enough of us will be for 2024. A lot of us won't be, but I think enough of us will be. We'll probably have some white light and a couple of H alphas set up down at the Fisherman's Memorial, unless we're clouded out on that date. So stop by and we'll show you these things without you buying new filters on there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, you
Go ahead.
Okay, and of course, there's indirect viewing methods. One cool effect with an eclipse is that a lot of things start to show the eclipse and behave like a pinhole camera if you look around. So yeah.
Will you be setting anything up out in Harbor Point that night?
No, we'll be down at the Fisherman's Memorial on Boulevard.
Right.
But afterwards, you mean?
No, just usually I thought you went from here to there, and there's a lot of light down there in the boulevard.
No, we don't observe there. No, tonight we're just looking out here. And in 2024 for the eclipse, we'll be down on the boulevard.
Okay.
It's during the daytime, so it doesn't matter about the street lights.
The sun will outshine them all. But yeah, thank you guys so much for again having us here today. And wish you all clear skies and crossing our fingers for the eclipse and for all your observing nights out here.
I have a quick question. Is there any new or interesting inquiries you're pursuing while doing this viewing?
Oh, not really. We're just like still like early stages of planning this, but like, is there anything specific you're thinking?
No, just wondering if there's some particular thing you're pursuing, or going to be, measuring.
Well, actually, we presented to the Amateur Telescope Makers of Boston also, and there was a guy who did ham wave radio, and he offered to come set up his system because apparently when the eclipse passes through, it modifies the ionosphere locally, and so you start to see different transmission effects. And so we may have him out there with like a portable antenna. So that's a bit of science.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's great.
If you get on the American Astronomical Society website, AAS.org, okay, they have a whole series of experiments that citizen science you can do. In fact, I'm on a committee that we're gonna give out $5 million in grants all across the country. So if you come up with a good idea, right?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, our next talk is Steve Kolaczkowski talking about Chaco Canyon, but first, there are going to be some of these eclipse glasses on the snack table, so grab some before you go.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, everybody. And
Steve.
so, similar to Mario, we went to New Mexico to see the annular eclipse. And we had hoped to go to Chaco Canyon to see it. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that. But I had to put this slide up because I saw this slide and I'm hoping that Dwight Lamphere, who I think many of you have met, he's a representative of many clubs in Maine, and he was the organizer for the Acadia Night Sky Festival. And I couldn't pass up because for a Chaco Canyon Night Sky Festival would have been spectacular as well, and I'm going to explain kind of why. Okay, so Chaco Canyon is, here's New Mexico, here's Albuquerque, and Chaco Canyon is up here. Okay, and if you go to Chaco Canyon,
What's it again?
this is the Chaco Canyon Cultural National Historical Park. That's what it is. And one of the things that you will be informed of by every single park ranger when you go to Chaco Canyon is there is no practical reason to go to Chaco Canyon. The Puebloans, or the Chacoans, who lived in Chaco Canyon had no practical reason to be there. There was no, it's not a great agricultural place. The river that runs through Chaco Canyon is not really a river. It's not even a stream. And in fact, all of the water that they drank throughout the year was stored in clay jars, and the water was collected from the walls of the canyons. Okay, so the stream that's supposed to be in the center of Chaco Canyon was not really a stream. Okay, so here's a map of Chaco Canyon. We're going to be referring to this throughout. It's a canyon that runs sort of northwest to southeast. It's only about a mile and a half wide. It's fairly arid. At the time that the Chacoans or the Puebloans were, the ancient Puebloans were there, so we're talking 850 to 1250. So about 400 years that this area was inhabited. It was grasslands. Okay, it was grasslands. The Puebloans, the domesticated animals that they had were dogs and turkeys. They did not have bovine or keep sheep or llamas or anything else like that. And the reason why I mentioned llamas is we'll talk about that in the future. So anyway, there's no practical reason to be there. So that's what part of why Chaco Canyon is kind of interesting. So why were they there? Okay, so I'm going to tell you why we wanted to be there. This is a Google map, sky map or sky photo of Chaco Canyon, and that blue line is a 50-yard wide line of the center line. Okay, that's the center line. You know, to see annularity, you could be 50 miles on either side. But that line right there is about 50 yards wide. So it runs right through Chaco Canyon and runs through several of the ruins. Here's one where it literally clips one of the ruins buildings at Chetroketl, which we're going to talk about. And here it runs just past another ruin known as Unavida. Okay, that line is only about 2-3 meters wide. So that's how, for those two pictures, that's the center line. Okay, so we're going to talk about another reason why it would be interesting to was interesting to go to Chaco Canyon is that the ancient Puebloans, we have evidence, and I'm going to show you some of the evidence at the end of the talk if I don't go too long. They were in contact with the Mayans and the Aztec. So it is quite possible that the ancient Puebloans back in 850 AD may have known that this eclipse was going to happen. Okay, so that's kind of interesting as well. Gee, we would be sharing in sort of an experience that they have. So I want to talk to you about the ancient ruins of Chaco Canyon, and we're going to start in the northwest corner. Here we're at Chaco Canyon and Pueblo Bonito. So this is an aerial photograph looking from the south, from sort of the east, southeast, looking northwest. This is Chaco Canyon, and this is Pueblo Bonito there. So we're at that top upper left-hand corner there. Pueblo Bonito was the largest of the building structures or great houses that were built there. This building covers the area of about 5 acres. It had it is estimated it had over 800 rooms. Now, what's interesting astronomically about this particular ruin is this wall right here runs due east-west, and I mean less than 1/10 of a degree off.
So for the people online, that's the bottom of the drawing, right?
The bottom of the bottom. No, this is an actual photograph.
Yeah.
Okay, this wall runs due north-south, so very much aligned with the sky. Here's a picture from the backside, better color, showing basically where the large structure was as forming a ring, and then some large plazas in the center. This is a rock fall of the cliff that fell onto it. There's an amusing story that as long as the ruins had been maintained by the ancient Puebloans and the Puebloans up until about 1850, that rock wall was safe. But then when settlers moved in and started fooling around and took some of the trinkets and other sacred objects from the area, the wall that was supposed to be there for the next 1,000 years decided to come down. So that was unfortunate. This is a drawing of what it probably looked like in probably 1150. Okay, so that's Pueblo Bonito. So to also give you an idea of how Chaco Canyon is sort of important, all the red dots are great houses or these buildings that are made by the ancient Puebloans. And the yellow lines are roads that actually lead, determined roads that actually go to Chaco Canyon. So why was Chaco Canyon so important? Well, we believe from the archaeology that's been done is that it was a center for religious activity. It was occupied by several families that had developed religious rites and so forth, and allowed them to make this a center for some sort of religious and cultural activity. Now, astronomically, there are some very interesting features. This is part of Pueblo Bonito. On the southeast side of the Pueblo, there are there's this one particular window, but there are two windows that are similarly shaped. But in this particular window, when you are approaching actually this time of year, I believe that the earliest is the 30th of October, 1st of November, when the sun rises, the light will pass through this window and it hits the wall and it gives you this very fine line right here. So this is the sunrise at November 1st. But at the winter solstice, the entire window is completely illuminated and gives you this beautiful square. And so clearly this window and this wall was designed to identify when you had the winter solstice. There's another window over here that has the approximate same orientation, but it doesn't have the wall behind it. So that other window is actually right about here in this wall, but you can't, no, I'm sorry, it's this window and that window. So that's the window I just showed you. And this is another window that doesn't have the wall behind it. As you can see the sunlight coming through. Now, if you go to the furthest southeast corner of Pueblo Bonito and stand right there and look to the east, that little notch up on the upper left is where sunrise comes up for the summer solstice, okay? And right here is the winter solstice on the edge of that notch. And if we go back, that notch is actually right over here. So there's the summer solstice and the winter solstice is approximately over there.
Were those notches man-made or evidence of being man-made?
No, they believe that, no, they were not man-made. From what we can tell. Okay, then moving further down the valley from Pueblo Bonito, there's Kin Kelso and pictographs all along that wall. So when we go to Kin Kelso and we stand at the southeast corner and look there from the southeast corner of Kin Kelso 2 weeks before the winter solstice, the sun rises right at the edge of that notch. So again, alignment. And then if you go to the northeast corner, there you are for the winter solstice. So right before the winter solstice and then at the winter solstice. So they put these buildings in these spots because that allowed them to use the natural environment to help identify what time of year it was. Okay, the pictographs further up or further down the valley in the direction of the water flow, this is a picture of what they believe to be a comet, a comet that appeared in, or the Halley comet, I think in 1066. And then that's the hand, and then the star or the round star-shaped thing, they believe that's the same Crab Nebula explosion that the Chinese are most noted for observing in 1054. The semicircle or ring, which is, you can see better here, they believe that that represented the phase of the moon when that event, one of those events occurred. Okay, so that's one of the pictographs further down the canyon. Okay, then moving back up the canyon, but almost directly due south. So here's where Pueblo Bonito is, Chetro Kettle, where we were clipping the eclipse, is the Casa Rinconada, and that is another place which is again exceptionally aligned with the celestial sky. So in the lower left, this is a north-south line. This is an east-west line. That is the central kiva, or considered central holy spot, sort of the sacristy for the worship. The picture in the upper left is looking into the kiva, and you can see the sunlight entering one of the windows. Okay, this is a doorway, and that's this doorway here to the north. I'm sorry, this is this is the doorway to the north. And when you look at Casa Rincona, here's the southern doorway down here. Here's the northern doorway here. That's aligned with yet another great house that's up on high on the mesa, known as Pueblo Alta. Okay, and then if you stand in or at the southern doorway, oh no, I'm sorry, this is the northern doorway. This is where I believe it's the winter solstice sunrise occurs. And we're going to take a look at that. So here we are at the central kiva in Pueblo Rinconada. And here we see where the summer solstice sunrise occurs, the winter solstice sunrise occurs, the equinox sunrise occurs at that notch. We have lunar minimum and lunar maximum. So when they watch the moon come up, which is on an 18-year cycle, they have where the moon comes up at this particular notch. I don't know if you remember, but this is where the winter solstice was from Pueblo Bonito. Okay, lunar maximum, winter solstice. So again, these great houses not only were aligned with each other, but aligned with the celestial sky. Okay, then if you're at the visitor center, which is at the southwest sort of corner of the driving portion of the park, Univita was where one of the central lines was going to clip one of the buildings. We have the great house of Ouija, and then we're going to talk about Jiajia Zhou, which is just to the south of the visitor center. Okay, so if we're at Ouija, 2 weeks before the summer solstice, the sun rises right here. At the summer solstice, the sun rises right there when you're standing at that spot. If you're, this is the picture of the visitor center, and this is a what's called a pecked basin. A pecked basin means that they hammered with a stone to hammer into the rock to make that hole. Again, this is where the sun sets 2 weeks before the winter solstice, right at that notch, which is right up there. So that spot was specifically picked to for that particular reason. Okay, so here's two sources of evidence of how the Chacoans were in fact in contact with the Mayans and the Aztecs. They had found these in room 28 of Pueblo Bonito, these large, somewhat large, cylindrical, what are called drinking glasses. And these are actually the same type of drinking glasses that the Mayans used to prepare cacao, chocolate. And they've actually pulled, because we've got, you know, better and better instrumentation now, they've been able to pull the chocolate out of those vessels. So they've actually found chocolate there, okay? And chocolate doesn't grow any further north than the Yucatan. So the only way that they could have gotten it was by trading in one way or another. The other is there are many, many macaw skeletons found in the pueblos. Okay, and again, macaws don't occur much north of the Yucatan. They were highly prized for their feathers, obviously. So macaw skeletons. Okay. So then almost directly south of the visitor center is Bajeda Butte, which is almost impossible to miss because it sort of opens out into a big plain at that point, and there's only one thing sticking up, and that's Bajeda Butte. That's what it looks like from the visitor center. It's pretty obvious. Now, why do I bring up Bajeda Butte? On Bajeda Butte is something that probably most of you have heard about, the infamous sun dagger. The sun dagger is formed on a face which is of rock, which is right about here, by these three stones. Now, there's a lot of debate as to whether or not you'd be interested, as to whether those three stones were put there or fell there. There's evidence for both. Okay, when they look at the rock up above, they definitely see this whiter stuff as compared to the red stuff. So the red stuff could have eroded away and they could have fallen into just that spot. It's also possible that the Chacoans could have moved these into place, but this is very high up on the butte, not impossible to get there. Obviously, there's people there, but at the same time, they're not small stones. So what do we get? These three rocks generate two slivers of light. And behind those rocks, the Chacoans drew a couple of petroglyphs, one of which is the large sun, and one of which is the small sun. And at the spring equinox, you have a large dagger going through the large sun and a small dagger going through the small sun. And you can just about make that out. Now, unfortunately, you have to sort of twist your head from looking at this diagram to this diagram. So rotate your head 90 degrees. Here's the large sun. Here's the small sun. There's the large dagger. There's the small dagger. Okay. At the summer solstice, there's a single line through the large sun. At the fall equinox, we get basically the same thing as we see in the spring. And then at the winter solstice, we have two large daggers on either side. So there's the summer solstice on the left and right. So try to give you two different ways of seeing it so you can hopefully you can all see the sun, okay, in both pictures. And then here's the winter solstice on the left and the fall equinox on the right. And I think that's it. So,
Right on.
so if you answer any questions, I tried to keep it short because I don't, it's already 10 after 9. Yes, miss.
I don't know if I heard you or not. What was the area like back in
Okay.
800?
They believe that the climate was very similar to what it is today, although it was during the middle to late 1800s, indigenous people moved into the area with their bovine and they ate all the grass. And then unfortunately, as the grass disappeared, the infamous Russian thistle, otherwise known as the tumbleweed, moved in. And so they are now trying to reintroduce the native grasses back into the area. But of course, if they really wanted to do it, it would be probably $100 million to $1 billion project. And, you know, if the National Park Service got $1 billion, you can be absolutely certain they wouldn't spend it on grass for Chaco Canyon. But they are trying to get the grass back because they do believe, based on the archaeological evidence, that it was a grassland. And like I say, the animals that they domesticated were dogs and turkeys. They did not bring llamas or anything interesting like that up there. At least there's no evidence of that.
Sir?
Yes.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, it's been 40 years since I've been to Canyon de Chelly.
It's the same kind of, the same people, just different times that they.
How far apart are they, those two sites?
Those two sites are probably on the order of about 150 miles apart.
Okay. And so,
Then maybe, yeah, maybe even a little bit less.
so when you said there's no reason for Chaco to be there, because it's not easily protected, it ran out of water, that's what I understood happened at Canyon de Chelly, sort of about let's see, what was the date there when they began to shift away because they were losing their water?
Yes, they were definitely, they had water in Canyon de Chelly and they were using the cliffs as protection.
Yeah.
In Chaco, there's some evidence of the very early Puebloans living at the edges of the cliffs, but they never really used the cliffs for protection. They built these houses. These are stacked stone houses, okay? That are these great houses. These were specifically built for that, for those functions. Now, they did start as pit houses, so half dug, half up in the air using wood and branches to cover the top. And then as they developed more technology, and the technology here is not that spectacular because basically all the buildings are made out of stacked slate or slate-like rock, okay? And it's all just stacked up. And the way that they made them square was by grinding one rock on top of another. They did a little bit of chipping, but mostly by grinding. Yes.
You mentioned something at the beginning that you like that place, especially for those eclipses, because they could have known that it was going to happen.
Yes.
Hear more on that?
You could try digging for it, but there isn't a whole lot about that. We know that the Mayans had definitely done their eclipse timelines, much like the Egyptians, several thousand years into the future, as well as several thousand years back. So they had the mathematics to do that. And so that's why we're fairly certain that they probably would have known that an eclipse. Now, would they have known it was going to be visible from that specific spot? Difficult to say, but they definitely would have known an eclipse was going to happen on or about that day. Yes.
I'm just wondering if it's considered a possibility that these were actually a Mayan subset that traveled into
No, they seem to be. These seem to be the ancient Puebloans. Definitely are a subset of the North American Indian and not the Central American. They're definitely different populations, and they can definitely, because they have found bones. I mean, there are grave sites, and that's one of the, a very important issue that's being discussed. And they have done the DNA on this, and so they absolutely can determine that they are definitely different populations.
And just how many people we're talking about lived there?
Okay, at the maximum, they believed it only supported a population of about 2,700 people who were there.
And how many were there on the eclipse day?
Okay, the reason we didn't observe the eclipse from there is I called the park on the Friday before, and I said, what are the chances of getting in the park tomorrow? And they said, 0. They said, the campground is completely full. We have about another 60 to 70 parking spaces. And because unlike so many of you have probably been to, say, Yosemite or Acadia National Park, and they have these nice wide roads, 2 lanes, maybe 3 lanes wide, and pull-offs and so forth. Chaco Canyon can't afford that. Chaco Canyon has one very narrow, 1 lane wide road that does all of its things. And what's interesting, one of the interesting things is to get to Chaco Canyon, you have to traverse at least 15 miles over dirt roads. It's paved once you get to the park, but getting to the park is definitely dirt roads, and some of them are pretty challenging. There were a few spots where we were in a relatively small SUV and we almost high centered. So it was, and Elaine can tell you, it was kind of bouncy. But anyway, so because of that, they said we're only going to have the number of cars that we have parking spaces for them, because we don't want them pulling off the side of the road where they're going to be getting into the landscape, and we don't want to tire tracks and things in the landscape, because if we do have a hard rain, that's going to create a new gully, and we're trying really hard not to have that happen. So they were basically planning on closing the park Saturday morning, probably half an hour to an hour after they opened the park that morning. So we didn't even try to, we were close, but we decided to go somewhere else. Any other questions? Yes.
I was wondering how they situated it so it was north and south and east and west and lined up with the summer.
They absolutely waited until what they believed was the equinox and lined things up, and then once they got the east-west line, then they could find the north-south line.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And one
Thank
thing
you.
that was interesting is that the day after, when we were at the eclipse, we were at Chaco Canyon, we took a tour of Pueblo Bonito, and there was a film crew filming a Nova episode that's going to be airing in March, I think. So keep a lookout for us in the background. That's it for tonight. Thanks you all for coming. We've still got snacks on the table there. Please finish all those if you can. And don't forget the eclipse glasses. And we have a reminder, we have telescopes set outside for viewing of Jupiter and Saturn. Thank you very much.
Could we make a comment from online? Hello?
Sure. Yeah, Alan, what?
Hey, Alan.
Yeah. Hi, can I just make a comment? It's heartbreaking that I can't be there tonight, but I first came to GAAC in 2003, or no, 2005. And GAAC was already running then. And I just wanted to thank mostly Michael, but everybody else who has put this amazing organization together and kept it running and volunteered their time and their energy. You've enriched my life more than I could ever tell you. And I just want to tell you how grateful I am for GAAC. And happy anniversary. I'm sorry I can't be there.
Oh.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Great job, Michael. Thank you.
Take care, Michael. Thank you.
Have a good viewing.
Good night.
Bye-bye, Patty. Bye-bye, Jen.
Bye,
Good night, everyone.
All right, I'm closing the door, folks. Good night.
Bye, Michael.
Good night.